We have James Dwyer from Engel and Volkers here in Halifax, and we have James on the line. James, are you with us?
Yes, I am. Good day, gentlemen.
Good day. Good day. James, what's it like out there? What's the market been in Halifax? Has it been a pretty hot fall market?
Well, no, the activity is down quite a bit in comparison to last year. So, I think we're down about 37.5% in volume. But the interesting thing is that median sale price has gone up for the second month in a row after the drop from the peak. So the lowest point we've reached was median sale price of $430. We're now sitting at $460. Got a couple of theories on that. Actually, is with interest rates increasing rapidly, it's creating a bit of a shock to the system, and thus in turn, same thing on the seller side. If they feel that the buyer confidence isn't there, then they're not listing. So what we're seeing right now is that buyer activity is outperforming the listing side again, and I suspect that with a lot of buyers, it's a situation where the desire to own a home and move forward with things is starting to drive that a little bit, considering that a lot of buyers kind of took the summer off after the first initial rate hike.
Yeah, I think for at least what we're seeing here on the mortgage side, James, that some people were really fatigued, I think, from the last 2 years. As you know, so many properties, there were 20 plus offers, and I think that was kind of disheartening. What we're seeing 100%. Here is agreements are actually starting to come together. And I think you kind of hit on it. There's not as many transactions, but there are successful transactions happening. And it seems to us that we're seeing that, I don't know if prices are down per se, but prices seem to not be going as over the list price. I think things are getting listed more at a realistic price or something. I don't know, but can you speak to that maybe a little bit?
Yeah, I think it's the evolution of the psyche of the buyer, right? Mm-hmm. So after going through a period of time where, it got very demotivating to constantly be losing and seeing houses sell at such high prices over the ask, they're now into a position where, yes, they're more conscious of things and it's more realistic at the list prices, and they're much more reserved, I guess, in the thought process of going over. But like I said, with not enough inventory there, it's definitely having a positive impact on home sellers right now for sure.
What can you tell us about new construction, James?
New construction seems to be chugging along well. We're waiting on some data points to come out from here in Nova Scotia, but across the country, especially in Toronto, which is the ground zero, if you will, is some heavy data for sure, but nothing at the local level just yet.
I would think, though, to interrupt you, sorry to interrupt you, James, but I would think that with the supply chains and the issues with costs and inflation and all of that, I would just think that for some people, a new home construction would not be the best option right now, depending on the flexibility of their budget. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, we've actually seen a couple of builders locally start to kind of do some teaser pricing or bring down their pricing to kind of reflect the market. But at the end of the day, too, what's really hurting them on their side is cost of construction is still not quite in line with things, and that's becoming a big challenge for them.
And what we're seeing is people have entered into some of these agreements 6 months ago, a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. And now with the way that the mortgage rates have increased, they're maybe not qualifying again. With most consumers, they need to get their rate set 120 days before closing. Are you seeing some buyers back out of their agreements that they entered into, months or a year plus ago, either due to financing or due to, other economic challenges like inflation?
Not on my side of things. Within the industry, we do see a little bit of it, but it's not what I would say, headline worthy, if you will, the data. It's pretty in line right now with that. Of course, we do see a little bit of it, but not a substantial side.
It must be.
I think the more important thing that came out yesterday was permits from across the country, like people, builders applying for permits. And I think they're down 17.5% for building permits across the country right now. So that definitely tells you that on the new construction side of things are slowing.
Yeah. That doesn't surprise me at all. I think the one challenge here in Halifax and in Nova Scotia is we still have more demand for housing than we do supply. In Ontario, in some markets, they're down 10, 20, 30, 40% in terms of price, not even transaction. Obviously, we know the transactions are down, but the prices have certainly softened. I don't think we're seeing that here. I think primarily we've had a very conservative market, historically, 1%, 2%, 3% price growth. Now, obviously, we know the last couple of years there's been more growth due to the demand in the market, obviously, since COVID. And I think maybe we're getting into more of this balanced market, but there's still an opportunity to have much more supply come online to kind of like, appease that amount of
I think
demand.
you're right on that. It's I was trying to look at it from a selling perspective and say, who's going to be kind of leading that charge going into 2023 to sell homes, right? And obviously with, if anyone's kind of locked in at a really good interest rate about, say, over the last 2 or 3 years, I mean, they're not going anywhere. I mean, why would you want to sell that and lose that, kind of great little interest rate that you're locked in for a period of time? But, anything pre to that, at the end of the day, I mean, you look at, say, January 2019 when the median sale price was $282, and now today we're at $460. I mean, that's still a substantial
It's significant.
growth.
It's certainly significant.
Although the market has dropped, it's still a net positive for anyone who's bought a home prior to that.
Yeah, I think so. And James, I was interviewed by BNN Bloomberg in November about clients that their mortgages are coming up for renewal. Not so much in our province, but there were comments from professionals across this country that there may be more homes coming up for sale because clients are renewing, and when their renewals are coming up, the rates are much higher today than they were, 5 years ago, 4 years ago, 3 years ago, 2 years ago, even 6 months ago. So have you had any rumblings from clients that are listing that they're listing their homes due to, some financial hardship?
We are definitely seeing that in the marketplace. We've seen it a couple of times, especially anyone who's in that position. So you kind of backtrack the time frame of when they bought the house. We do see it in the market right now, but I don't think it's kind of, had a big effect here yet. It's definitely coming because some of these renewals are quite substantial, and you have to ask yourself, if I don't know, too many homeowners that would have that kind of a disposable income to offset that. So it's just easier for them to get out from underneath it. But it's definitely on the horizon. And I think we're going to see an uptick of that in the spring. I think we're going to see an uptick in duplexes, triplexes, and as well Airbnb listings.
The multis, yeah. I think just obviously with Nova Scotia, we know, and obviously in Ontario and across the country, many provinces have limited the amount that rents can be increased. So I think we're certainly landlords and small landlords have been impacted by that because their costs are higher, but they have been able to collect more income. We have about a minute left, James, and I just want to kind of give you the last word. As we know, it's Financial Literacy Month. In many households, the home is the biggest asset. But there's all kinds of different real estate that people can invest in to increase their net worth. We'll give you the final word. What Financial Literacy Month in terms of increasing your asset, what is your best advice to clients?
Well, I mean, I think going into 2023, we just, I think a lot of people have to be a bit more reserved in their approach on things. Ultimately, having flexibility in the budget and be positive with cash flow, it's going to be very important coming into the next year or two. And so, when it comes to, say, on the purchasing side, it's even though you may be pre-approved at a higher price point, make sure that what you're purchasing is a good reflection of the budget. Just because you can afford a higher or more expensive home does not necessarily mean that's a positive thing, especially if we have any bit of a downturn that's coming. So I would say just be very cautious. Have the research done, especially if you're planning on purchasing. Make sure that list price is the correct price. And if you do have that offer over that, make sure it's in line with the market. At the end of the day, you can't fall in love with any house, especially in that type of a market, because, it's got to make sense. It's got to make sense at the budget. It's got to make sense in the black and white. And just be very, patient and persistent.
James, hate to interrupt you, but we got to wrap it up. Thanks so much. Sure. I appreciate your insight as always, pal.
All right. Take care, guys.
Okay, that's James Dwyer. We'll be right back.